I've not posted a video on Minories for a week or so. That's because I've been busy on other things, but since then I have been working on the layout. What I've been doing is painting each of the individual sleepers on the track for Minories, and I've also been painting each of these, and if you look closely you can see that each of the chairs that holds the rail to the sleepers has been painted as well, so that's taken quite a bit of time. Steam locomotives, when standing in the station, would often deposit things like soot and oil, and these areas would get very stained in practice. So again, I've got to do work on the track areas that are in the station areas to get that effect. You might say that's a labour of madness to do all that. However, what I've noticed when I've been to many of the railway exhibitions that I like to go and see is that track always looks very well presented, and I've tried to get that for Minories. There's still quite a lot of plain areas around the track work that will need blending in. So to do that, I'll be using some polyfiller mix to get a representation of what the land would have looked like, and I'll also be using an airbrush to use colours to blend it all together so it looks realistic. I've made the platforms using square edge timber that is now 15mm high, so on top of that I've got to put the paving and the platform surfaces, and that will raise the platforms by another 3mm, which gives it the correct height for a British station. What I've done with the platforms, I've used Metcalf brick papers, I've used a grey on here, and you can't see it but there's also a grey on the inside face where I'm tapping my finger, and this one here, as you can see, I've used some red brick just to lend a little bit of variation. I've still got to do some work under here, this area around here where there's got to be another support for the road bridge, and as I've said before, that's probably going to be some tubular steel columns which I will put together shortly. But for now there's quite a lot to do on this platform area. All the tops of the platforms need to be covered. There's still got to be a section that goes across here, and then obviously above there will be the station building, but I've got the main platforms all in shape now, so there's still quite a bit of work to do covering these platform areas. I'll be using various types of platform effect, probably some paving mixed with some concrete mixed with some tarmac or whatever else they've used on platforms in the past, and I'll also be edging here as well, and here and over here, so that there is a clear lip coming out slightly from the top of the platform to make it easy for passengers to get on and off the trains as they come and go. The next loco coming out is the IVAC tank engine. The other job I've been working on at Minories is to build an area where I can store the locos that are in use. I mean, in this country we tend to refer to them as fiddle yards, and I've got a fairly basic fiddle yard down here. It's only got 3 tracks. It's built out of Pico set track. It's easy to use and it doesn't take up a lot of space. Here's the set track point that allows access to 2 of the tracks in the fiddle yard. But I've noticed that there's quite a cool name that's used by the Germans for what we call a fiddle yard, and it's called Schaffenstation. It means shadow station. And the final loco to come out is the powerful Fairburn tank engine. I think this area here where the trains come in to halt at the end of the terminus tracks is one that deserves quite a lot of attention, and what I've decided to do is to scratch build a footbridge, and I'll try and get that to the same sort of dimensions as Freezer had in his track plan for Minories. And I've also got to build the buffers at the end of the tracks, and I think these need to be similar to the ones that Freezer had got in the plan. There's lots of ready-made buffers available. I mean, there's one here which comes as a kit. It's plastic. I mean, I've painted it and I've put a bit of an effect on the top there to represent the ballast that is in the middle and fills the sleepers from which this buffer stop is built. And then you've got the rail built buffer stop, but again I don't think this is really going to be suitable or sort of fit the scene that CJ Freezer had in mind when Minories was drawn up. So again I'm going to scratch build some buffer stops. These are in place now. I've just got to do, as you can see here, there's a little gap where I need to ballast the base of the buffers, but that's been made out of balsa and card, and the uprights that you can see, they are taken from a firework that landed in the garden, a rocket. So it's a rocket stick that's propping up the buffers, and the colour scheme on the buffers is a dark oak wood stain made by Ronseal. I just thought it looked good, so I've stuck it on. If you look at the drawing in the CJ Freezer plan for Minories, you can see the station building is above the track, and access to and from the platforms is from a footbridge with steps at either end that take you up to the level the station building's on. Well, I've built some steps, and you can see these are layers of cork tile that I've glued together, and they're 3mm cork. It was left over from the baseboard build, and these are the steps on the other side on the other platform. Still got to be fully painted, and there's got to be a connecting bridge between the two sets so people can actually get into the station building. Some progress on the small footbridge. Brick paper glued on to the sides, which are made out of cardboard from an old Amazon Alexa package. And then the footway itself, that's a Metcalfe platform strip that I've cut to fit. Top edges of the wall either side of the stairways on the footbridge, they'll be treated to some capping stones, and the walkway will have a fence running along it just to stop people falling off onto the track. Had to move the footbridge back slightly because the train would have hit the top of the footbridge as it came into close to the buffers, so it's just moved back. So the footbridge is complete now. I've added some coping stones to the tops of the walls, and I've also put in place a fence with some adverts on just to brighten up the brickwork on the footbridge. So that's been made from cork, card, strips of balsa. If I turn the footbridge round, you can see the sections of cork, which are the steps, and then underneath, if you have a look, we've got the strips of balsa that support the walkway and the wall at the front of the footbridge. I've now installed the tops of the platforms for Minories. I've still got to do a little bit of blending in here and here at the ends of the two platforms. I'll just give you a view all the way along. As you can see, they're both edged with the white lines, and at the top here I've got the footbridge that I built, and I've just dropped in temporarily a super quick station that I made many years ago, just to give the impression of the terminus building. But I think I'll probably put something else in place there. I might even scratch build something to look more like the Cyril Freezer drawing in the plan that he did for Minories. I've still got these areas here to complete. You can see that's probably going to need some form of walling putting against it, and the buffer stop needs to go in there, and the same over here where the sections of support can still be seen. There will need to be a wall put in there. I still have to do quite a lot of detail work on the platforms. I've got to put some weathering in where the ballast is, and I've got to add various platform furniture, as well as the tops of the platforms can probably be slightly improved by some sort of slabbing effect, which I've got to look at doing. This is CJ Freezer's drawing of the station for Minories. It's an optional station because, again, he was concerned about the lack of space that a lot of homes had for including a model railway. The area here is what I have to build the station for Minories. Now, I've measured this fairly closely, and whilst I can get a station building in there, I'm not going to be able to get an effect with a road behind it. It's just too narrow to do. So what I've decided to do is to build a low relief station building and leave a little bit of space at the front of the station building so passengers can use it as a concourse. To assist me with the scratch building I was about to do for the station, I got hold of this book, Miniature Building Construction. John Ahern made a significant contribution to realistic railway modelling throughout the 30s, 40s and 50s. Two station designs caught my eye. The first was the one that had been built by John Ahern, which you can see in the picture here. It's Winchester Station, which is a rather impressive clock, and some quite bold lettering you can see proclaiming the Southern Railway is the owner of the station. And here's the model that John Ahern made of Winchester Station, which looks rather impressive. If I can get anywhere near that standard of modelling, I'll be well pleased, but I think as it's an early attempt at scratch building, I may have to lower my sights. The second influence on the design of my Minories station is this one, and it's part of a model that was done by the Hornby stand and was shown at the Loughborough Model Exhibition in 2019. It's based on Burlington Station in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, what they did with this kit was to anglicise it. So I started messing around with little sketches and pictures of what it might look like. Here's one I did. But I'm now at the stage where I've made a card shell. I've cut out some windows and door opening, and I'm thinking now how to finish this off. It's obviously going to extend out here, and it's going to extend over here as well, with buildings that go a little bit further back. but at the moment I'm just trying to get the scale of it so that it looks in keeping with the rest of the Minories layout. You can see the prairie tank looks okay alongside the station building. Just going to bring another locomotive in, this time the IVAT. It's creeping in under the bridge. So what I've decided to do is almost a mock-up of a large terminus station. So what I've done, I've got some card which you can see, and that's been shaped. So I've made some windows in it and a doorway at the bottom, and then I've taken some lightweight balsa and I've sort of framed it around so you can see there's various sort of relief features on it, and I've used some brick paper on it to fit it in with the existing colour scheme. So this is where I am at the moment with it. I've still got to do the windows, but at the moment I'm just painting over the woodwork which I've used to create a little bit of a relief effect on it. Not quite sure at the moment what I'm going to do with this centre section. It might be used to house some sort of railway crest or a clock or something of that order. But at the moment I'm leaving it blank, and I'll have a think about that. This is Plastruct styrene strip that I'm building up this profile with. So far I've got 2 strips on, so you can see they're glued in place. And then the final piece is just a strip of balsa. If you look closely you can see that the balsa grain shows through even when it's been painted fairly heavily. So what I've decided to do is to use some manila envelopes and to cover the balsa strip so that it smooths it out and gives it more of a stone-like appearance. I'm using PVA glue to stick the manila envelope to the balsa. The brown manila envelopes give the building a stucco effect, but I still need to paint them. Painting the stucco in a sort of a beigey cream colour, changing the ground floor stonework to brickwork. I think it sort of blends in better with the stucco. Fiddly tricky windows. I've done 2, and I've got 2 more to do on the first floor and 2 to do on the ground floor, but these have taken ages. I'll show you the way I do them. But the windows are made from clear plastic sheet. What I do is I slot the glazing in first, and then I put in the windowsill, which is a small piece of balsa, and the lintel, again another small piece of balsa goes in, and then I do the window frames using some thin styrene strip, which you can see there. I put the upright sections in first. There's 3 of those, as you can see, and then I do the horizontal glazing bars afterwards. It's somewhat fiddly, but overall it looks reasonable, I think, so I'm happy with that for the time being. I find Rocket card glue is good for the glazing strips. For gluing on the lintel and the sill I use balsa cement. So there we've got the windowsill and the lintel now glued in place.
Now I go window cleaning to earn an honest bob. For a nosy Parker, it's an interesting job. Now it's a job that just suits me. A window cleaner you would be if you can see what I can see when I'm cleaning windows.
4 upper windows now done. The small buildings at the side of the main terminus are built from a Quaker Oats box. I cut the box down, and that allowed me to use the corner pieces that were already there. This is one of the ancillary buildings that I've made. I've done this window slightly differently. I've drawn it out on a piece of clear plastic using one of these. It's a paint pen with a very fine nib, and I found it really easy to use. This window will be a bit tidy when it's done. It's still got the lintel and the sill to be put in, but you can see up here the strip that I've used to form a cornice. around the top of the building. The other ancillary building at the far end of the building is this. Doesn't look much at the moment because it's still got to be finished and painted, but it's going to be a sort of a goods parcels entrance, so any bulky items that arrive at Minories can be transferred from the station to wherever they're being taken to. Here you can see I'm painting the internal walls of the small buildings, and I'll do the same for the large building with black paint. If at a later date I want to fit lights, then the black means that they'll be more effective. I'd also draw your attention to the use of some bracing strips of balsa in the corners of the low relief building. This is a method that is highly recommended. It's included in the book by John Ahern, and it just makes sure that there's some rigidity and the corners are slightly crisper when you fold back your card. And here we have all of the 3 Minories buildings with their black interiors completed. So this shows Minories in a semi-built state. Obviously loads to do around here to tidy all this up. I'm thinking about the parcels and goods building in the corner there and how it could be accessed from the station, from the platform, so I might give some thought to building some sort of level there to make it easy for the station staff to move things into the goods and parcels area. Slightly different window design on the ground floor. The glazing's in for this one, but I've still got to do the framing, so I'm just waiting for some plaster up to arrive in the post so I can build that up. I'm working on a sign for the station at Minories, and I've bought some letters made by Slater's Plasticard Limited. These are 8mm high, and I've just started the work on the sign, basically using a manila envelope strip and some PVA, and I'm going to use that to put on the top of the station. While we're waiting for the glue to dry and the paint to dry, thought I'd introduce a couple of new locos. As this loco is what's known as a half cab, you can see there's a nice new green tarpaulin that's being fitted to the roof so that the crew, when they're actually on board, can shelter from the elements. Now we've got the old faithful 062 tank engine in with a couple of teak coaches. They're ready to be moved, so our next new locos are going to come down and move them. This is a Metcalf kit, and I've chosen to use it so that I can put a canopy at the front of Minories. I've fitted a backing piece with an overhang, and that should help me support the work that I'm going to do in the centre section. for either a railway crest or for a large ornamental clock. The other pre-made structure that I'm going to include is this small booking office, which I had left over from the super quick terminus station that I built several years ago. It should fit in quite nice in the middle of the Minories main station building and be available for the passengers to buy their tickets from. So for an assembly of the Minories building, starting with the parcels and goods received building in the far corner. That's followed by the main station building, and finally the waiting room building, which fits at the end. The booking office building is now in place, so the final part to add is the Metcalfe canopy kit. Here we have the Minories station in full form, canopy fitted, booking office in place. The main job I've got to do is this centre section. As I say, I'm thinking along the lines of a large clock or company crest to fill that gap. I've also got to put in posters on the walls near to the booking office. And finally, the rooftop needs completing, and I'll need to build some chimneys to go on there, but I'll do the detailing of Minories as a separate video. Just placing some ballast around the buffer stops at the terminus and gluing that in place with the usual PVA, water and detergent mix. I've put a concourse along the top level of the terminus. That's been painted light grey, and on the back wall there is a packing strip that will just make sure the terminus building is in the right position for the arrangements that I've got for it. Minories backscene filling piece, I've painted blue to give a representation of sky behind the building, and the shape of the building's painted in black. As I say, if I fit lights at a later date, then painting everything internally black means the lights are far more effective. I've also constructed a wall to go behind the single track. Here are the three station buildings in place. I've detailed them using Scenics, signs, posters. You can see there's a goodly selection all along the front of the building as per practice in BR days, and then I've got my selection of enamel advertising signs on the fencing. The roof's got two chimneys. These were made from balsa strips glued together, and then I've put another balsa strip round the base, covered it in brick paper, and the rest of the chimneys being stuccoed, and then a couple of chimney pots on each using some styrene rod. The roof itself meant to represent a leaded roof with some battens which I've painted black just to highlight them. And there you can see the full station building with the canopy in place, ready to receive any of the trains. Further details to do will be people and station furniture. I'm currently looking at the area next to the loco spur, and as you can see from the plan, there's a coal stage, a water crane in place. I managed to get an original Airfix kit for the signal gantry for Minories. I'm just in the process of gluing the kit together. Just got the platform and the handrails to do, and then I'll add the colour light signals and the ladder. Here's the 3 signal lights for fitting to the gantry. The casings will be painted black, and then the signal lights themselves will be like traffic lights. I've decided that white probably looks the best, and I've gone for that. The catwalk I've done in brown, and the railing is yet to be painted up. The posts will be painted black. Tied off black cotton at both ends of the post, and the cotton's being glued in place on each post using super glue. Here is the completed Airfix signal gantry. I've built a dapole water tower for Minories. It's been assembled and painted, so it sort of fits in with a Midland type of colour scheme. The rivet detail I've tried to highlight with some rusty effect using a rust powder. This is the rusty weathering powder. You don't need much of it. It can be sprinkled on very sparsely, and then just, as you can see, I've sort of like moved it around the rivets with a cotton bud. Some electrical components, a cabinet and a rectifier unit, which I've made out of balsa strip. It's a relatively small area to model, and it comes in at something of an angle, so the coal stage is going to really be a 3/4 relief model. I've decided on building one out of balsa, and here it is. The stage itself needs to be put in place here, and there needs to be some sort of access to the coal stage from over here where the platform ends. So there's probably going to be a walkway along the side of the track and some ladders or steps leading up to the coal stage. Needs to be painted and loaded with coal, and I guess a man with a big shovel. First coat of paint on the coal stage, more to follow. I've used a couple of different colours. The first was a wood stain, and then I used an acrylic brown, but there's a gap here at the front where coal can be shovelled into the engine's bunker. I've added a small platform to the end of the coaling stage, as you can see, and I've got to build some steps so the people can actually access the coaling stage, and I've started to tidy up the end of the station platform here. I've been doing some ballasting, and I've still got some work to do on the very end of the platform just to blend it in slightly better than it is at the moment. Work on the coaling stage is now complete and the steps are in place. The steps are from a footbridge made by Airfix, and I've basically cut those in half to make them narrower, and I've added some styrene strip handrails. All we're waiting for now is the coal to arrive. Along with the coaling stage, the end of the platform has now been completed. All that's needed now for the coaling stage is for all the coal to arrive, and I understand that's been posted to me and should be with me this week. I've converted the Metcalfe signal box from the green colour scheme to one that matches in with the Midland region colour scheme that I've done for the rest of the buildings. Here's the water tower in situ, and next to that I've added a water crane. Beyond that is the scratch built coaling stage, along with a supply of coal and a man with a large shovel, and that's linked to the station platform by steps and a walkway behind the buffer stop and some more steps that go onto the main station platform. The area around the coaling stage needs to be weathered in so it reflects the nature of a busy working area that's quite grimy, smoky, sooty, oily. And here we have a ginty pulling into the loco spur so it can be replenished with coal and water. So for now, that's the update on Minories. More to follow. I'm doing some work on Minories. This time it's about the land next to the track. I'm just putting down a base coat really of black paint, and then what I've started to do at the base of the retaining wall is to put in some light sort of scenic work, some grass, some small sort of vegetation growth. I don't think there'd be much because you're close to the railway. The only area I've actually put quite a bit round is the water tower here, primarily because I looked at a photo on the internet and there was a water tower which was exactly the same as this one in terms of the base. It was all the ballast, and then at the back of it there was a lot of vegetation, so I've copied that. Just really thinking about this area around here. This is where the scenic effects end and the track actually turns the corner to go into the fiddle yard. So I've got a number of choices. I mean, I can do what I did originally. That was just to put up a plain black piece of ply, lightweight ply, with a hole in which the train disappears through, or to do some sort of scenic effect, probably another road bridge in it, different sort of style to the one I've got down here. To make the road bridge, I've drawn a shape on some hardboard and then I've cut the shape out with the Stanley knife. The road bridge I've covered with stone paper, which matches the retaining wall at the side of Minories. Let's have a look at it. There we are. You can see I've put some additional relief on it with some balsa strips, which I'll cover later with some stone paper, and I've also created an arch effect using some plastic which has been cut from an old bridge model that I had. So here's the road bridge in place, and I'm planning to build it up like this. So you'll have the road bridge, the cardboard section which goes across between the Rice Krispie packets, that's going to be raised up, and then it will swing around here. And what I'll do around this area here is I'll slope that in, grade that round. Here there'll be a wing wall coming off the bridge to support the embankment where the road runs. At the back of the bridge, that will actually just be another piece of backscene which will rise quite high to meet the backscene that I've got running across the rear of the layout. It's just a plain backscene which I've painted to represent sky, so the eye's drawn really to the railway and the trains on it rather than the detail on any backscene. I've just cut the wing wall, so it's going to run across there, and then I'm going to grade the bank so it's in line with the wing wall, so there's a slight slope here to bring it round. And here's the wing wall with the brick paper glued to it. It will have some coping stones running down the top, and also the parapet on the bridge will have similar. Just trying to get levels and the look of it by using some old bits of card. Need to play around with this just to get it to blend in. I've put the back scene in for the road bridge, and I've also added a support strip down the edge of the board so that when the corner by the end of the road bridge is being completed, there'll be some support for any scenic work that I do. I'll just show you how the bridge sections now all assemble against the bridge back scene. First of all, we've got the cereal packets carrying the roadway. They go in like this. Then I've got the road bridge front itself, and this is a push fit between the cereal packets and the retaining wall, and that goes in, as you can see, like that. And you've got the road bridge coming out. This area here will need to have more road on it. The scenic work's actually going to be between the wing wall of the bridge and this edge along here. I've taken a small piece of hardboard, sort of curved it round, and then I've just lightly tacked it into the top of this edge here. Propped up the end of the hardboard with a strip of balsa, and for the gap underneath I've cut a card template. Here is the card template. I've cut some folding strips, so with these they will actually glue along the edge here and hold the card in place. Cardboard former in place, and the PVA glue, as you can see, has been applied and it's setting. I'm just showing you the completed road bridge and wing wall together with the main structure for the landscaping effect, which I'll be doing next. To make the cliff face I used a mixture of hydrocal, which is a plaster type mix that you can buy, made by Woodland Scenics, and some PVA, and then I've spread that over the card backing template. I spread that over the card template, and then I've worked it with a brush to get the desired ridges and aspects of the cliff face. And I'm just applying a very light coat to get the effect that I want. I'm trying to go for a sandstone effect. I find the way to do it is to water down the acrylic paint quite a lot, and then just dab it from the top and let it run into all the cracks and crevices on the face of the cliff. You can see it's taken and it's just running down. Doing it more around here, but just get it nice and watery, and you can see it's running into all the areas that you need. A bit over here, you can see that. This bit here, you can just see it's just running in quite easily. Any bits that it doesn't get, just give it a little dab with the brush. Cliff faces are now all painted up. It might need another coat because the paint does dry fairly lightly on a white background where it's absorbed very quickly on the first coat. So I'll just start dribbling in some of the wash that represents the soil that's been carried down the cliff face by the weather. So I've done the runs of the darker colour. So the cliff face is now really finished apart from any vegetation that I put on it. Minories is based in the Midlands, and the Midlands does have outcrops of sandstone. This is why I've used that type of colour scheme on the cliff face. I've been spending some time doing some detailing on Minories. Also see I've been working on the area at the base of the coal stage where there are some remnants of coal which have dropped from when the bunkers have been filled on the engines, and there's also a significant amount of ash. I've achieved this by using a cigar which a friend of mine left behind, and I've added some real ash pieces to the track bed to get the effect. I've also been adding some light vegetation around the track, and I've completed this now. It's along the base of the retaining wall all the way up to the bridge which I've made. This is now all dried off and complete. You can see if I bring it in close, you can see the rock face, the sandstone rock face. That's now finished. Vehicles are now coming over the road bridge. We've got a Pickford's lorry with a consignment of furniture for someone who's moving to Minories. We've also got a steeplejack who's come all the way from the northwest, from Bolton, and you can see he's here in his brightly coloured Land Rover. Somebody by the name of F. Dibner. So he's working on the church steeple, which is some way distant from Minories. There's still some detailing to do. Hedges, fences and so on. A little bit of detailing on the signal box. I've renamed it. It's now Minories North, number 1 box. And I've also added in a walkway by the signal box, so it's possible to get from each side of the track to and from the box. I've also added some crew members to the 1F, so you can see they're in the cab driving the 1F. This is the first time an engine's gone through the completed scenic brake, so it falls to the 1F to do that. That's it for now. Thanks very much for watching. More to follow. And I've placed some buildings on the big platform. The building on the left is a wheels kit which I made a couple of years ago for a southern themed model railway layout. The long building is a ready-made job made by Hornby, and what I've done with that, I've repainted the doors and the wood cladding on it, added some posters and timetables to it as well. My thoughts on this area here on the Minories layout are that it won't remain like this. I just wanted something to fill the gap that's there, which, as you can see, it's quite wide. CJ Freezer's plan shows a station canopy running the length and the breadth of the platform areas. At some point I'll probably have a go at making that. The downside of it is that if you're running the model and you're swapping locos over and you're doing uncoupling and the like, then the canopy itself is going to be a hindrance, even though that was in the original plan. You'll end up taking it off, putting it back on as you swap locos and stock round on the layout. So although I'm going to have a go at building one, it's one of those jobs that's way back down the list. In the sort of short term, I'll replace these. They don't really match in with the regional colour scheme that Minories has got. That's the main station building up here, which is more of a Midland colour scheme when you look at the notice boards and so on. What I'm going to do here, where these two temporary buildings are, is to replace them. Bachmann do a Scenecraft range, and they've got some great central buildings. There's a waiting room and a gents loo, so they will sit quite nicely on that big platform, and I think they'll tone in well with the colour scheme on the terminus building. I've fitted some posters on the retaining wall. I've done quite a bit of weathering at the base of the wall. You can see if the camera pulls it in, it's now got some grimy look to the brickwork at the base. I've improved the fitting of the adverts on the bridge, so I've converted my Yorkshire Tea advert so it's got quite a good backing piece to it, and I've given it a light coat of gloss varnish. On the other side of the bridge I've done a Marmite advert. I've just found some old advertising from the internet and printed it off, and then I've got the backing card and the varnish to work again on it. I've done some weathering with the airbrush. That's to blend in the ballast and the areas around the track work. I've also put a old railway coach alongside the water tower and the signal box. That's a kit that's assembled, made by Ratio, and I've weathered it, painted it to make it look like it's been there for a long time. It's used by the crews for their mess room and to store things in. If you've watched the earlier videos, you'll notice that the signal box has been changed for this one. It's a Hornby model, and all I've done with that is change the nameplate. I made up the signal box sign using Microsoft Word, and then just printed it off on the matte photo quality paper. I fitted a wall and extended it with some fencing. This is to just make sure that nobody gets caught by the engine, which moves into the coaling stage over here. The other change I've made to Minories is to wire it for analog. So as it was wired for DCC, I've changed it over to analog wiring, and the levers here are all used to isolate various sections of track work so I don't get locos moving when they're not meant to. These are the old Hornby 00 lever switches here that you can see. You can see here I fitted a Pico isolating switch. That's on the outside bay. I had to fit some isolation at the end of these two rails as well, and I did that by cutting one rail on each of the two tracks. So there's the cut and the wire that I soldered on so that I could power the rail when I needed to. And I've done the same on the other rail over here. As you can see, there's a cut and there's a white wire soldered to the side of the rail. I use these Xuron track cutters to make the breaks in the rails for the isolation at the ends of the tracks that went to the terminus. This design of cutter is quite handy because you can cut the rail from above. The back scene needed quite a bit of careful cutting. There are chimneys, churches and other high buildings that you have to cut round to actually get the best effect. As you can see, I've added a couple of signs to identify the station. I've made these up on the word processor and printed them off on the matte photo paper. The British Railways font for the lettering is Sans Gill. I've now added the station buildings that I needed to fit in with the Minories Midland colour scheme, and here they are. There's a waiting room, lots of interesting brickwork and relief on this model, which is of the Great Central Station building. And alongside this is the gents' toilet.